Welcome to the Car Guys and welcome to a silver Porsche 911 964 RS, one of my all-time favourite classic Porsche, and from within the confines of this car and in around reviewing it for your viewing pleasure, I'll also be deciding whether I'll ever buy a brand new Porsche again and possibly my thoughts on the new GT3. So if that sounds like your particular type of vodka, let's get on with it. So this week then I am sat in a Porsche 911 964 RS, a particular sweet spot of Porsche's history, one of the purest and most exciting 911s that's ever been made that until about 5 years ago was almost completely unappreciated. The 964 RS was launched at the 1991 Geneva Motor Show. It was based on the standard Carrera 2, which is why they're all slim-bodied cars, and therefore it's quite humble looking and quite anonymous. In some ways it's very much like the same ethos of the modern GT3 Touring. It's a powerful racing car for the road, but it doesn't look very shouty. Be silent, but carry a big stick. There's no big wing on this car. It's all very svelte, and from the outside, the only way you can tell it's a 964 RS is because it sits 40mm lower and it's got very distinctive magnesium wheels. RS, of course, stands for Rennsport, and that is your guarantee of driving excitement. In many ways, this is the spiritual successor to the classic 70s 2.7 RS. They made 2,276 in total, so they are around. 1,806 were left-hand drive basic cars like this one. There are only 111 right-hand drive, so if you want one of those, they are pretty rare. There are also only 76 touring versions, which are the more luxurious ones, kind of anti-RS versions. 290 were N/GT cars, which are basically race cars with actual roll cages in them. But if you're happy to have a left-hand drive one, like we've got today, there should be no problem getting one. The big question is, what colour are you going to go for? Ruby stone red? Pink? Do you want a white car? Do you want a yellow car? Do you want a mint green car? Do you want a black car? Dark blue? Silver? Or, my personal favourite, maritime blue? There's a lot of choice. The downside is they are now phenomenally expensive. So why is this car special? Well, Porsche wanted to sprinkle some magic racing fairy dust, and they really did a number on it. First of all, they ripped out loads of the weight from the car. I've got sound deadening removed from everywhere, so this is a lot noisier than a Carrera 2. We've also got stiffer suspension. The road height was dropped by 40mm. I've got an anti-roll bar. I've got adjustable suspension. I've also got a single mass flywheel, a close ratio G50 gearbox, ZF asymmetrical limited slip differential. It's also got an aluminium bonnet, lightweight glass, rose jointed suspension all round, stiffer suspension all round, and an M64/3 blueprinted version of the engine. That's good for 256 brake horsepower, 240 foot-pounds of torque. It can go from 0 to 60 in 5.3 seconds and on to a top speed of 162 miles an hour. It's a little lightweight rocket ship, this thing. Removing many of the weighty items and also a lot of the sound deadening means that this car is now 1,230 kilograms. Crucially, there's no hydraulic assistance for the steering, so it goes back to being a full manual steering setup. And that's why it feels quite heavy and cumbersome at low speeds, but it gives you tremendous feel when you're pushing on. Although the outside of the car gives you few clues that there's anything special, it's the inside where you immediately notice it. Why? Well, bucket seats for one, no radio, no aircon controls, no rear seats whatsoever. It's a stripped out road racer in here. Classic 964 interior. You've got your familiar 5-dial setup. You've got your key on the left hand side. You've got that absolutely iconic steering wheel with RS emblazoned in the middle. That's also the horn. On the transmission tunnel, you've obviously got the 5-speed G50 gearbox and handbrake. The wing obviously goes up automatically at a certain speed, but that certain speed happens to be higher than the speed limit. Porsche were clever about this because they realised that if the police saw you with the wing up, you must therefore be doing more than the speed limit. So they've actually given us a manual up or down control here, which means you've always got manual control of the wing, and if you get stopped by the police, you can say, oh no, I was doing 60, I just put the wing up myself. I really do love the interiors of these 964s. For a start, It's tiny in here. You can easily reach both sides of the car from the driver's seat. You can see the front extremities easily because you've got those two prominent wings at the front. Inside it's all very snug, but visibility is fantastic. If you look over your shoulder, you can see all around the car with almost no blind spots, which makes it very easy to drive a left-hand drive car like this in the UK, because you don't have that problem where you're pulling onto a dual carriageway and you cannot see anything to the side of you. These things are important for everyday driving. I always love this concealed glove box, which is controlled by turning this knob, and there you've got something to put your valuables. I also love the fact that here there is a hidden ashtray, which you just pull out. Love that. Now, like the modern GT3 Touring, these bucket seats are fixed in place, so if you want to recline them, you are out of luck. And continuing the like theme in here, I've got lovely red fabric door pulls and manual windows. And I have to say that with cars so packed with technology these days, it is so refreshing to be able to use manual windows. Now remember, these cars in the 90s were about 25 to 30,000 pounds. We were trading them, we were track racing them, we were being proper hooligans in these cars. But probably in the last 5 to 8 years, the value of them has gone up and up and up, and now they command anything between 180 and 210,000 pounds, depending on the variant. And if you've got one of the rare NGT racing E-Type versions, probably even more than that. Sadly, the pure 964 RS was never exported to America, but in 1993, America did get the RS America, which was kind of like a weakened version of this car. It was a bit half-hearted, and it meant until the 25-year rule was activated, people in the States couldn't get hold of these cars. Of course, now you can. And that might go to explain why the values of these cars suddenly started shooting up around about that time. What also makes this particular 53,000 kilometre left-hand drive lightweight example is that it is the cheapest 964 RS on the market by some margin, and the reason for that is very clear. It's had a bump at some point in its life. It's been completely and properly fixed, and it drives just like every other 964 RS that I've ever driven, but it does mean that it comes now with a hefty discount. This car can be had for under £140,000, which makes it a proper bargain, and it's been loaned to me for a few days by my good friends at Ashgood Specialist Cars so that I could appreciate it, so that I could spend some time with it, bring you the full story, and also so that I could discuss and decide just what I'm going to do with Porsche going forward. But enough of stats and history, let's take this thing out for a drive and I'll show you where the magic really happens. So first things first, because this has got a single mass flywheel, it's very, very light, it can be a bit of a tricky bugger to actually get moving. You sort of have to treat it a little bit like a Carrera GT, where you don't really give it too much accelerator, you just kind of ease off the clutch and let the car itself pick up, and then get on the accelerator pedal. As soon as you get moving in this 1992 964 RS, your senses are assaulted from all sides. There is so much mechanical noise in this car. It's very reminiscent of the 996 GT3 RS that I drove not that long ago, but dialed up to 11. I can hear the mechanical diff, I can hear the engine making all sorts of wheezing and grumbling and rolling noises. It sounds like you've got a really annoyed lion in there that you've smashed over the head with a bag full of nuts and bolts. Oh, we got Morgan. Morning, Mr. Morgan. Now, this is the fifth 964 RS that I've actually driven, and I would have to say it's probably the third best. Number one would be the red example that I drove at Paul Stevens. Number two would be the maritime blue one that I almost bought at Paul McLean. And this is probably the next best after that. So what's it like to drive a 964 RS in 2021? Well, it's bloody marvellous. Honestly, all of the accolades that these cars get, and bear in mind that 964 RSs were unloved for 15 years, but now people have acknowledged the unique part of Porsche's history that this car represents, and they've realised that this is one of the absolute gems that Porsche's ever made. Straight away, the steering feels heavy and very direct. It is alive in my hands, it's jiggling all over the place. I picked a particularly bumpy set of roads to test this car on, The gearbox is smooth, easy to change, no problems whatsoever. Coming up to a left-hand bend, so let's take the left-hand bend. Oh yes, yes. I can confirm, yes, the steering is incredible. It is a heavy steering, but there's so much feel that you can tell exactly what the front wheels are doing. It's sublime. 964RSs generally run 40mm lower than Carrera 2s of the same vintage, but I suspect that this car has been lowered a little bit more. And as a consequence, the ride is quite harsh. I mean, it's very harsh. It's very, very harsh. I love how tiny the car feels. I love how loud it is. It's just fantastic. If only my 718 Spider sounded as loud and as mechanical as this. I mean, listen to it. Now, with those prominent front wings, I can see exactly where the car is on the road, and generally, even a small road like this, there's quite a lot of room in the lane because the car is so tiny. So it's entirely possible to take different lines through corners, whereas in modern supercars, you'd be barely fitting on the road at all. That's part of the 964RS's party trick. It's so tiny and nimble, you can just get in and out of gaps that other cars just couldn't. Ahead of me, those familiar 5 dials, it's all you really need. I can see the exact level of health of the car. If there's any individual warning light, you get a master warning light coming off. You are in a left-hand drive car, but because the car is so tiny, it doesn't really make any difference at all. We're pretty much in the center of the car anyway. I'm changing the manual 5-speed gearbox with my right hand instead of my left, but after about 1 minute, it becomes completely second nature, no problem whatsoever. If you've got to worry about driving left-hand drive cars, don't. The only problem comes when you're going through a drive-through or a car park where you need to get out and take a ticket. But the good news, everyone, is that we're up to temperature, which means we can now give this car the beans. Here come the beans, baby. Here come the beans. Oh. Oh. Now that is some old school beans right there. Fantastic. It's not breaking any land speed records, but the drama that you get from doing it is awesome. It just makes you want to do it again. Look, drop a couple of cogs. Here we go. Ready? Ready for some beans? I think you deserve it. Second gear beans, 3,000 revs. 3, 4, 5, 6. Change up. Oh, oh. so good. I'm sweating. And now the RS is coming alive. Oh, here we are. We're on one of my favorite roads now. It's just got the right amount of twisty bits, and it's just such a nice sweeping road. Oh, that's good. What you have to realize about this car in particular is that all the ingredients are there to make the car more enjoyable to drive quickly and on track and in twisty bits. Everything conspires to make that a better experience than perhaps any other 911 apart from the modern GT3s. Now, a couple of things to bear in mind. Number one, it is a 964, it is a 90s 911, so if you are silly going at high speed round corners and you do the wrong thing, it will spin off the road and kill you. Okay, that's just what it'll do. Number two, the brakes are phenomenally good, some of the best in any road car at all. Does it feel like an old car? Yes, to a certain extent it feels a bit like an old car, but actually that's the appeal. It feels old because it's old school. What hasn't aged one iota is the delicateness of the steering, the severity of the naturally aspirated acceleration. It's not the fastest car in the world. It's a great car to rinse through all the gears and all the revs, having all the fun, and you're not doing Herculean speeds like you are in the modern cars. See, you can feel the revs build instantly. It bellows, this car, it absolutely bellows, but look at the way it grips. Once you got some heat into those tyres, it is absolutely stuck to the ground. It's darting, the steering is immediate. It's just fantastic. Honestly, I've forgotten how much fun these things are. Do I need a 964 RS in my life? I mean, yes I do. I do have to get one of these cars. It will be maritime blue. I'm not going to accept any substitute. Okay, maybe dark metallic blue. Dark metallic blue or maritime blue, that's it. No other colour. This is a fantastic car and I do need one. Would I rather buy one of these rather than one of the latest GT3s? Yes. Yes, absolutely. As good, I'm sure, as the new GT3 is, and the 992 is a fantastic car, the combination of the dealers, the game, and maybe the size of those new cars means I would rather have one of these every day of the week. Would I rather have this than a 992 GT3 RS? Maybe. That's a more difficult one. One thing's for sure, I don't think I would be having any more fun in a 992 GT3 than I am right now. So what do I not like about this car? Well, on this particular car, the suspension's a bit too much. Oh, case in point. It's perhaps been a bit lowered or fiddled with, but it's very hard. Obviously, this one's had a ding in its early part of its life, but it doesn't seem to have affected anything to do with the actual driving pleasure of it. And it's silver, which I think is probably my least favourite colour on a 964 RS after Ruby Stone Red. Low speed manoeuvring is a definite downside. And turning circle. The turning circle on this car is horrendous. What do I like about it though? The steering, the size, the power and the thrust from that engine, the grip levels are astonishing. I love all of the mechanical noises. I love the old school shove. I love the fact it's got a limited slip differential. I love the fact that it moves all around and you can have a lot of fun with this car. Driving a 964 RS really does remind you of how great Porsche can be. I know that the GT3 Touring is probably the best car that I've ever driven, but you can't help but feel that the back catalogue is something worth exploring. There are so many iconic, fantastic models in Porsche's history, and I have to say I am a little bit more excited about exploring those perhaps than trying to get some of the new cars. For all you people who didn't bother watching my Porsche rant video all the way through, let me just assure you, I already knew I was not getting a GT3 slot, okay? I already knew that. I hadn't played the game enough. I was totally at peace with the fact that I was not getting a GT3. So that Porsche video had nothing to do with GT3 slot allocations. I know you all want to think that it does, but it didn't. It was purely about customer service, okay? The new GT3 and the Touring variant do look exciting. I'm particularly interested in the fact that you've got wishbone suspension, for example, for the first time instead of McPherson struts. That's going to fundamentally change the character of the 911 GT3, and I'm very excited to find out what that's like. The trouble is, I don't think I'm excited enough to want to play the game and to have to be one of those people that chases after the new cars whilst at the same time losing just a little bit of your soul. So have I come to any kind of a conclusion from today's drive? Well, yes. Number one, I need to get a 964 RS. And number two, I don't think I need a new Porsche in my life. I think maybe the 718 Spider is the last new Porsche that I'm ever going to buy. And number three, I think I'm going to have to start going back through Porsche's catalogue of past greats and get some of them. If you get the chance to own a 964 RS, do it. Just do it. Don't argue with me. Just sign the check, pay the money, take the car home. You will not regret it. Not only is it a current classic and a future classic, it offers you a style and a drama of driving that you rarely get in other cars. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. Thanks for watching this episode on the 964 RS, one of my all-time favourite Porsche 911s. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you found it useful, and I hope you didn't mind me whittering on and on about my thoughts about Porsche. If you like what we're doing on The Car Guys, please subscribe, leave comments and likes. There'll be another episode of The Car Guys next week.